I want to talk about a book I just recently got a couple days ago. It's F by Emma Arata. He's a Japanese cartoonist. And to give you a summary of this book, it imagines a world in where after the Fukushima nuclear accident in 2011, that region of Japan decides to secede, and that fight is joined by foreign fighters. And it's essentially what if in northern Japan you have happened what happened to Syria. And it's an interesting book, and I kind of want to discuss a little bit. So the story starts off with this journalist who's falsified his passport, who's trying to get into this northern region of Japan where the Fukushima nuclear reactor is. And as he gets in, the bus he's on is exploded. He's the only survivor. And what you find later on is that he runs into the embedded army that first came into place to, I guess, liberate, or after they wanted to secede from the rest of Japan. But then later on, he comes into contact with foreign fighters. And the foreign fighters are basically ISIS. ISIS without the religious motivations that ISIS had in the Middle East. And a lot of the story is based on real events with other characters. For instance, the lead character's name is John Cantley. In real life, John Cantley was a British journalist who was embedded and eventually captured by ISIS. And there's a lot of interesting parallels with this character, what Cantley does. And what I liked about this book was that, and I hate to admit this, but I'm not as well versed into the details of what happened with the ISIS occupation. I just kind of follow the news. But here, there's a lot of things that were done. For instance, in real life, like in this book, the character who plays the journalist, he's not killed, but he films these like stories that make going to Fukushima being back to normal. And apparently it's based on real videos. And I've seen a couple where John Cantley was forced to make these videos that said Mosul is back to normal when it really wasn't. It was propaganda. And so it kind of shows the journalist going from journalist to being embedded with the National Defense Forces to being captured by these foreign fighters, and the things that he's doing just to survive. It's an interesting story, but what really adds a lot of color and what's essential to this book is that it's translated, and there's a very interesting 25-page essay written by Ryan Holmberg, or is known as Mangaberg, social media. The reason why this is interesting and essential is that it's come to me that after reading so much manga, especially manga from 30, 40, 50 years ago by Tatsumi Suge Tezuka, that you have to really know what's kind of going on at the time in Japan to really get a full flavor. I mean, the story I find this story interesting, and I find it well done. I liked it. But when you really read about it in the context of what was going on when it was being done, and this essay provides not only that, but it provides a brief history of Japan, showing how the northern provinces have always been kind of exploited to make the center and the city, especially Tokyo, more affluent, a lot more resources. It talks about how the North was exploited for energy. It talks about how after the Fukushima accident that the government put a real clamp on any negative news, and still does. And it goes on to like postulate where the cartoonist got the idea for this, and the plausibility of it and the parallels. These are actually video captures from the John Cantley video. John Cantley, by the way, has still not been found. They don't know if he died in an airstrike in the fall of ISIS. They don't know if he's just still in country, whatever. Some people have said they've seen him, but nobody's really seen him in 2 or 3 years. And so, but based on these videos, the cartoonist created the story. And this essay is excellent. And all of Ryan Holmberg's essays are great. This is really good. It gives you a flavor for what's going on, what was going through the cartoonist's mind, how he found this manga, because apparently a lot of art expositions are funded by the government in Japan. So since they're funded by the government, they're under the censorship of the government. And so this was like an underground, independent art fair, and there were only couple hundred copies that were printed. Holmberg got one. And so once you read this, it really puts into context a lot. Like, you can read this on its own and it still is a great story, but it really explains a lot. And so if you buy this, I recommend you read the essay. You read the story first, you read the essay, and then you can actually flip back and refer to certain pages, and you'll see where you'll see where certain things have a little bit more meaning than they would. So I like this a lot. I got this at Wig Shop Web Shop. I know Gutter Pop Comics also has this, so you can find it. I think it's really important. I'm glad to read something that was made within the last decade for a change. And for this artist is not really well known in Japan, because this type of work really wouldn't be permitted in Japan. The government would have a real issue with this running counter to the narrative that they have built about how everything is getting back to normal and everything is great and all that. It's really good. I think I'm interested in reading more of his work and more work about manga dealing with Fukushima, just dealing with a lot of the realities of the accident and how they've impacted people. I often find that, like, when I used to work in a bookstore back in my college days, I remember one time somebody came in and told me, "Oh, I love nonfiction. Nonfiction is more interesting than fiction." And I thought, what does he know? But as I've gotten older, I've realized that nonfiction or historical fiction is a lot more interesting a lot of times than regular fiction, because sometimes things happen in the real world that you couldn't think of in your own imagination. Anyway, this is a great book. Really recommend it. And hope you enjoy it if you get it. Thanks.